Hello, good morning. Welcome to the Dailies on Echo Television. Today is Wednesday, the 5th of June, 2024. And we are saying that Labour have suspended their strike for the next 1 week because pending negotiation from the federal government. So we can see that various businesses are beginning to start working gradually, such as the power sector and other sectors are beginning to gain ground. So we'll keep our fingers crossed and see what the government will come up as the new minimum wage. Maybe they may settle for 100,000, who knows? So we'll just be following that closely. Do remember you can drop your views, your comment, your opinion concerning these and other stories that we will be looking at this morning. I am Seda Elisha Dasho. I'll be doing the program alongside Rachel Tanzi. Good morning, Rachel.
Morning, Celia.
All right, we shall go straight into the paper, starting with the New Telegraph newspaper.
The big story on the paper, Labour strike. Nigeria lost 3 trillion naira first day of action, says OPS. Warns key economic sectors will experience instability as Labour relaxes nationwide strike for 1 week. Senate berates Labour for national grid shutdown. Hatch flight disruption, plans legislation to stop reoccurrence. You can find details on page 2 and 3. How airlines lost 50% of trapped funds to currency devaluation. African carriers worst hit, says IATA. You can start with the details on the front page. CBN confirms 460 billion naira payment to First Bank. This is concerning Heritage Bank liquidation. You can find details on page 7. Police Service Commission okays 10,000 applicants for recruitment. There will be 1 hour power shutdown at MMIA today. This is a report from FAA and you can find details on page 5. On Guba poll, INEC extends voters registration in Edo and Ondo states. Works Minister condemns second Niger Bridge vandalism. You can find details on page 3, and I believe something needs to be done about bridges and federal structures being vandalized. They should tighten more security there. You can find details on page 3. Still on New Telegraph, Canada to launch permanent residency on arrival program for caregivers. NBA conference recognizes Sanusi as 16th Emir of Kano. Details can be found on page 4. Editors condemn increasing spate of journalist abductions. 1 dead, over 30 trapped in Niger mining pit collapse. You can find details on page 6. Tinubu to Finance Minister, work at minimum wage cost implications. Urges panel to come up with new sustainable wage award. On insecurity, bandits kidnap 30 villagers in Niger. Details can be found on page 6 and 27. We have a study that says ultra-processed foods linked with insomnia. So if you're struggling with sleep, perhaps you are eating a lot of processed foods. You can find details on page 27, and that's all the news on New Telegraph newspaper.
Right, on First News newspaper, we have Naira depreciated by 0.05% against dollar at the official market. Detail found in the paper. Investors lost 38 billion naira as equity market dips amid bearish trends. Detail found in the paper. Tinubu names Abuja Highway after Wole Soyinka. You can find that in the paper as well. The issue of strike flight operation resume as Lagos Airport and others resume. National Grid restore after strike suspension, coming from the NUEE. And the big story for First News, say boost for workers. Senate pledges updated minimum wage bill passage. Tinubu is taxing the finance minister to present the new minimum wage figures in 2 days, as Labour suspend nationwide strike to secure fair wage negotiations with the federal government. PSC releases list of 10,000 successful applicants for recruitment into constable. Election losers won't go to court if judiciary is upright. This is coming from Jonathan, the former president of Nigeria. And on the second Niger bridge, vandalism, Umahi condemns the act, labels it ruthless sabotage. More detail found in the paper as well. Fubara declares end to political crisis in Rivers, and we hope we do not hear another chaos again in that state. We are having a picture story here. The president, Tinubu, inaugurating the Atra Road 20 from the Northern Parkway in the Outer Northern Expressway, now being named after Wale Soyinka Way, in a landmark ceremony in Abuja on Tuesday. That's yesterday, and that's all on First News newspaper.
On Nigerian Tribune, minimum wage. Tinubu gives finance minister 48 hours to present cost implications. The writer says wants committee, state, private sector to work on new wage award, as Labour gives reasons for suspending strike for 1 week. Senate carpets NLC TUC for shutting down national grid, hatch disruptions. Attorney General should prosecute states that fail to pay minimum wage. This is a statement from Falana. You can find details on page 4 and 8. CBN clears OPay CUDA orders to resume new customers onboarding. Naira misses IMF exchange rate listing for June. Details can be found on page 6. Tinubu approves naming of Abuja Road after Soyinka. Says my development agenda transforming Nigeria. You can find details on page 29. 3 burned to death as tanker explodes in Rivers. How judiciary encourages politicians to besiege court after elections. You can find details on page 13. Police Service Commission releases list of 10,000 successful candidates for recruitment. Customs Army repels smugglers attack in Lagos, kill 1. Details can be found on page 27. Editors condemn spate of journalist abduction, says Cybercrime Act not enacted to persecute journalists. Want government to set up fight against terrorists and bandits. Details can be found on page 4, and that's all the news on Nigerian Tribune.
On the Metrics newspaper, foreign investment depends on FX reform, not higher oil production. Finch tells the federal government, detail found in the paper. And Heritage Bank collapse. CBN debunks planning to withdraw license of 3 banks. Says allegation false, intended to trigger panic in the financial system. Some more detail concerning the banks that were not actually giving that withdrawal, that were not actually withdraw their license, were not being withdrawn. You can find that on page 3. And on the issue of strike, shutting down the national grid and other action by Labour equal to economic sabotage, says the Senate. Detail found on page 3. Today, I can brag Tinubu hails Wike over excellent performance as FCT minister. And concerning the new minimum wage as well, amid strike suspension, Labour still talks tough. We won't accept 3,000 naira increase, Osifo wants the federal government. Says when it comes to Labour issue, it should be taken seriously. Tinubu directs the finance minister to present the minimum wage template, and then we have Mugalu canvasses 75k to 100,000 naira as the minimum wage, reveals why the 495,000 naira is unrealistic. Still on the paper, we have low turnout forces INEC to extend voter registration in Edo and Ondo State, and I think this is where we have to use opportunity to please let the people, indigenous of Edo State and Ondo State, to please do go out and collect your PVC. It's very important. It's not just something that you should do, but it's your right. It's as well as the opportunity to exercise your franchise. So please do well and go collect your voters card in case you've not done that. And then we are having 3.7 trillion naira budget padding saga after 3 months suspension. Senator Ninge has resumed. More detail can be found in the paper. Federal government officially inaugurates Nigeria's National Prescription Policy Steering Group. You can read that on page 11. We still have the commissioning of the Abuja Road that was named after Wale Soyinka. You can find that in the paper. And as well, let's take a look at what's happening in the entertainment industry. A column here says, I will never again reveal my political inclination. This is coming from Toye Abraham vowing. You can read why she said that on page 14. And that's on a Metrics newspaper.
On leadership newspaper, minimum wage, Tinubu demands realistic proposal in 48 hours. 6 cost implications, sustainability details. Labor defense suspension of strike for 1 week. You can find details on page 4. Trending 83-year-old woman arraigned for trafficking. On number, CBN clears trap $831 million foreign airlines funds. You can find details of both the trends and numbers on page 2, and that's all the news on leadership newspaper.
On the Punch newspaper, sell crude to Dangote Refinery, FG Direct IUC. You can find out on page 21. Naira may settle at 1,450 to $1 by December. This is coming from Finch Rating. And on the issue of the local government funding, reps back the federal government suit against governors. 30 governors spent 968 billion naira on refreshments and others in 3 months. This is coming from a report. You can do well to read those 30 governors that spent such a huge amount on refreshment. As well, we are having the minimum wage talk. Labour considers 100,000 naira as Tinubu issue ultimatum. President orders the minister to calculate the cost, and then Labour gives 1 week ultimatum. And I think it's important we talk about it. Of course, when the strike was ongoing, Nigerians were happy. I mean, maybe finally this is the only way that Labour will get the attention of the government. But we've seen that, I mean, a number of people also sharing their view. I mean, of what use was the strike in the first place? It was just for a day, and then they are back to business. How sure are they that the government is also going to take them serious? So various school of thought concerning this issue of minimum wage. But then I couldn't resist the temptation, because here we're seeing that how much governors spent on entertainment or on refreshment. And I remember you and I as well were going through what our senators as well spend on entertainment or refreshment. I think over 1 point something million naira or so. And then here we're seeing that the federal government may, it's a may or may not, so really we're already seeing others giving maybe between 75 to 100,000 naira. And of course, the number of people want to break down, because when Labour actually gave what they wanted, they gave a breakdown of what each of the transport, utility, and if you just look at the whole breakdown, you know that there was nothing like entertainment refreshment anywhere. It was basically on what Nigerians need crucially. You and I were saying that the moment you think about just transportation from your take-home pay, you cannot help but break down, because it's something that takes a lot. Let's not even talk about feeding, because you need to feed to come to work and all of that. And they're in a system of government where it appreciates awarding its workers. And then looking at the amounts, you know that this is nothing but a way of discouraging workers from giving their best, because you are supposed to award them. And so, you can't help when we have, our senators spending as high as 823,000 naira for entertainment, and then we are having not even up to half of these amounts. So you just can't help but wonder, what is the logic, or how realistic are we looking at this? Because if you're asking Labour to be realistic with their money, already we are saying that the finance minister has been startled with the responsibility, 48 hours to come up with the template of what it will cost the nation. So automatically, if it was the 400 plus, it was going to spend, the country was going to spend over 9 point something trillion naira. Right now, the money will definitely go down. So I just hope, I'm truly hoping that the government will really be considerate in whatever amount they will calculate eventually, because this 100,000 is not a standing amount already. It's just a speculation, maybe or maybe not. But let us see. We're having our governors, our senators, as well as other top-ranking politicians spending more than that. I think it will only be right if the common man will be considered when we are talking about the issue of this minimum wage.
From the beginning and up till now, Labour have proven to Nigerians that they know what they're doing, because they didn't just come out to say 600,000. They didn't just come out to say 490 something and where we are now. They came out and gave a vivid breakdown of what this thing will go into to every household, using the statistics of at least an average Nigerian family is 5. We do know that it's more than that, but we can go with the statistic that says the average Nigerian family is 5. And using such statistics, they were able to break it down and say, you know what, this will go for this will go for that, this will go for that. However, the federal government have not done anything like that. And that is why I keep saying, okay, Labour have proven to be ahead when it comes to this minimum wage. First of all, by the breakdown, standing their ground, they are being reasonable, because it's not just a blind federal government give us 500,000, we deserve it. No, it was well thought of, broken down. It's like a budget. Okay, this is what a family spends every month on basic, very, very basic needs. Just as you said earlier, there's no place for entertainment, there's no place for hardship, there's no place for rest and vacations and all of that. There's nothing like that when it comes to this breakdown. It's just the basic needs that every Nigerian needs to survive, and all of that: health, water, light, and all of that. Now that the president have ordered Wale Edun to, you know what, bring down your breakdown. This is where I am about to see how the federal government is going to categorize the expenses for Nigeria. I am waiting to see. We're at 60,000, right? I am waiting to see how much the Minister of Finance will give to health, will give to food, will give to rent in this 60,000, because the negotiation stopped at 60,000. That is what he is going to bring that breakdown. Except if they are going to do a different breakdown based on what they are now newly proposing as regarding what should be the minimum wage. I just can't wait to see what the breakdown from the Nigerian government will be concerning what a Nigerian should have for food, what a Nigerian should have for energy supply, what a Nigerian should have for health, education, and all of that. Is at this process you will know that the Nigerian government truly don't have us in mind. I am just waiting. I just can't wait. 48 hours is already gone. We have less than 48 hours now. We just have to wait and see. By tomorrow this should be out, hopefully, and see what will the federal government allocate to every basic need of a household in Nigeria, and then from there the labor can stand. I know sometimes when we see the Labour taking an action, they kind of disappoint Nigerians in a way, because we think it should be a little bit longer. Let's send the message out there. It feels like they're shifting their ground. But what I see the message from this 2-day strike and the power outage is Labour sending a message that, you know what, we can do this. We can shut down Nigeria if we want to. We have that much power, we have that much capacity. We can shut down Nigeria if we want to. We have been giving you long ropes, we have been giving you enough time, second chances, third chances, fifth. We've been sparing you a lot and waiting to see you do something. And we want to show you that if we say we want to shut down, we can shut down. We are not shutting down because we're giving you graces, if I must say that, to see if you will come out with a better plan for Nigerians. And if you are going to disappoint us, we want to show you that, you know what, this shutting down we are talking about, we can actually do it. That is the message I can see on another side. That, you know what, Labour have shown the federal government that yes, we can shut down this country if you're not going to listen to our demand. So let's wait and see what this one will be. Let's see what Wale Edun will come up with as what should be what Nigerians should spend regarding expenses, household, families, and all of that, and then we'll move forward from there.
Of course, Richard. So let's just keep our fingers crossed and see. We'll pick it up soon when they come up with something. Another very pressing story on the front page of the paper here is 1 kill, 50 miners trapped as pit collapses in Niger State. And I just can't help but wonder, was it through illegal mining? Because obviously that was through illegal mining, and I know that the Ministry of Solid Mineral has been talking heavily about the issue of that. So I hope that the rescue team will be able to rescue these 50 miners that were trapped in that pit. Still on the Punch newspaper, CNG will reduce petrol imports by $4.4 billion US coming from the federal government. Police hunt for tenant as landlord dies during rent face-off. Also, we see PSC to reveal the 10,000 recruit drops 61,093 applicants. We will recall earlier this year there was the issue of recruitment in the various sector in police, the army as well. And here we're seeing about 10,000 have been recruited. So you can do well to go to their website and check if your name has been part of those who will be recruited into the police force. And that's all on the Punch newspaper.
On Vanguard newspaper, federal government targets $4.4 billion petrol import savings. That is, if we begin to use CNG. You can find details on page 19. Editors flay increasing spate of journalist abduction. You can find details on page 8. 20 feared dead as mine site collapses in Niger. You can find details on page 13. The big story, minimum wage. Give cost to government today, Tinubu orders finance minister. As Labour suspends strike for 5 days, says negotiations should be completed as soon as possible. While we suspend their strike, coming from NLC and TUC, Committee on Minimum Wage adopts agenda for today's meeting. Senate Action 8 asks federal government to expedite action to stop industrial unrest. AGF should prosecute state that fail to pay 30,000 naira minimum wage. Coming from Falana, you can find details on page 5. Edo, Ondo, Guba, INEC extends voter registration deadline to June 9. Details can be found on page 7. There is a business economy column on page 21. Labor leaders must reconsider wage demand to avoid layoffs. A statement from Rawani. And we have picture story commissioning where we can see former President Goodluck Jonathan and that of award ambassador Andy Liu presenting Vanguard Businessman of the Year award to Dr. Gabriel. And that's all the news on Vanguard newspaper.
On the Guardian newspaper, talking about World Environment Day, how illegal mining, deforestation, and others leave Nigerians poor. And we are seeing some of the picture cut out here where we're seeing the issue of deforestation, which is really, really worrisome. And I know we've been talking about this issue. I think when we talk about World Earth Day, I think that's when we're concentrating about pollution, especially when it comes from disposing of mostly all of this plastic waste. Thank you so much, Rachel. Plastic waste. And here we're seeing, I like the way it comes back to back. There's not so much of gap between the World Earth Day and World Environment Day. And I think it's really, really important that we have so much of emphasis on what should be done. I know you and I have talked about the issue of deforestation, whereby we have a number of trees being cut down. And not just for, you wonder, we are seeing the way things are going, erosion that is taking place as a result of that, and then a number of things that are happening. The weather is getting extremely hot. You can actually tell that, those only, I guess, hotter and hotter, is cracking, and then all of that. And then they are setting, all of these can be attributed to human factor because we are the ones that are responsible for this. I remember when we were saying, back then in school, I could remember from primary school, there are certain times you're being asked to bring flowers so we could, plant flowers. And that was just a way of cultivating the habit of, when you cut down a tree, you're supposed to plant at least 2. But that is not it. I clearly remember where I live presently, there was a time that you could barely see what is happening. The only thing you could see, you could just see the trees. But right now, the place is as clear as anything. And that we have a number of cars going there, fetching of sand, and then you know that the way when it's raining right now, because of the issue of mining, it keeps eating the earth, and before you realize it, erosion will take place. And we are seeing the picture story here. Just see the result of the deforestation. See flooding on the front page of the paper, and then we have miners as well. And then so you could actually tell that we really, really need to look inwardly. I'm happy I've seen various states taking the initiative of planting trees, but I hope that we'll have not just leaving it to the states, governors, or just leaving it to NGOs. Individuals can also, contribute to the issue of, what can we do to be able to protect, our environment? Because I think the issue of global warming it's not just in Nigeria, it's everywhere. So I'm hoping that we will play our part as well when it comes to the issue of this World Environment Day. It's not just another day that we celebrate and pass, but what can we do that beyond today we can keep that habit of making sure that our environment is healthy and clean at all times?
I think what worries me the most concerning some of the activities we do is deforestation for a very long period of time. When I see people cutting down trees, when I see that one time this place was dense with a lot of trees and now it's no longer there, it worries me a lot because what we keep forgetting, not like we do not know, but that these trees are the reason we have oxygen. These plants we have are the reason we have oxygen. Without these trees, we don't have oxygen. Now, the simple thing that we fail to do, and that's what worries me the most, is that when you cut down a tree, there's nothing wrong with cutting down a tree because timber is a natural resource. We have world economies that timber is a natural resource and they make money. We have America, for example. Timber is one of their major natural resource. They build houses with it, they ship it. It generates revenue and income. It's the same everywhere. But what we fail to do, and that is where we lack discipline. And I keep saying you don't have to wait for people to have that discipline. There need to be the Ministry of Environment and all of that actively doing these jobs, because why are you there in the first place? Is that when you cut down a tree, you plant more trees. For one tree that you've cut down, at least plant 10 more trees. That is the law of fighting deforestation, or that is the law of forestation. On the other side, when you cut down one tree, you plant 10 more trees, plant 20 more trees, because these trees you have now is as a result of someone planting them 20 years ago, 30 years ago, 50 years ago, and all of that. Yes, it might look that way, but you don't have that background knowledge, but it's as a result of that. So if someone had not planted it or have preserved those trees, you won't have them now. So why are we not taking preservation seriously? We need timber, we need wood. Of course, our furnitures are made of wood. It is a resource that God has provided for us because we need it for papers. We need it for so many things. So we can't say we cannot cut down trees. But the question is, why are you cutting them down without planting them? And I just hope, because we keep seeing a lot of campaign, a lot of movement, million tree planting projects and all of that, be it with war organizations or be it local ones. We see that happening in the northeast, some state governors taking it seriously to say that we need to plant trees. It helps with a lot of things. You talk about erosion. We are even the climate change we are experiencing is as also a result of that, because once a place was cold and you had more air blowing, it wasn't that humid. Lesser trees make the humidity higher because now there are no trees to protect you from the sun, blowing the wind around your towards you and all of that. So there's so much into this. So I just hope that someone is listening out there and saying, you know what? I need to plant more trees. I need to plant tree. It's not every tree that has to be fruit. I know when we think of tree, we want to make sure it's mango or pear or guava because we want to think we must eat from the tree. No, it doesn't have to be. Just any tree that will grow after a period of time, to just make sure that, you know what, deforestation is not a threat to our existence and the health of the environment or the air we breathe in at the end of the day.
And I think another way that the government can impose certain laws to stop that. I mean, I've seen states that, in fact, even the use of charcoal is prohibited. The reason why, because people cut down the trees for that, so it can actually be controlled too. Still on the Guardian newspaper, we have NGE condemns increasing spate of journalist abduction. More detail found on page 2. Senate tackles Labour over the blackout hatch flight disruption. We have Oshun APC expelled. Aribasola warns members against associating with the ex-governors group. Bandits abduct varsity lecturers and family in Katsina State. We hope something will be done. The issue of strike, Tinubu blinks, give finance minister 48 hours to table action plan. IGP warns senior officers against extorting personnel over promotional interview. More detail in the paper. INEC extends CVR exercise captures 120,458 new voters in Edo and Ondo State. Data found on page 27, and that's all on the Guardian newspaper. But before we continue further, we would love to take a break at this moment. Quite a lot for you to chew, looking at from today being the World Environment Day, and issue to the fact that we're seeing that Labour have suspended their strike pending what the federal government will come up with as a new minimum wage, as well as we're seeing the operational private sector are complaining how much they have lost as a result of the strike. So when we come back, we will continue the paper review. Please stay tuned with us.
The gospel of Jesus Christ is our Heavenly Father's plan for the happiness and salvation of His children. Equa Television International shares the gospel of Jesus Christ because the world must come to the realization of the power in the atonement of sin through the grace and mercy of Jesus Christ. Sharing with the world the message of hope that can clean anyone from sin to enjoy the peace that is in Him. Equa Television International is live 24/7, preaching the message of salvation and truth to the world. Pray for Equa TV. Support Equa TV. Be part of Equa TV. Keep watching Equa Television International.
Make your everyday informative, make your everyday count. Know your world, daily affairs, national and international, with authentic news events as they unfold on Global News and Zuma Nigeria, Monday to Friday at 1 p.m.
Welcome back. It's still the dailies. We have been looking at a number of stories where we're seeing that the president have ordered the finance minister to actually bring a table for the new minimum wage, which we are hoping to hear what the amount will be, as Labour have as well suspend their strike pending. By next week, we should know what the next line of action will be from Labour. And as well, we're seeing that today being the World Environment Day, commissioning has been going on. I mean, throughout this week, we've been seeing the president commissioning one road after another, which we're seeing that the recent one was the one that had been named after Wale Soyinka. So we would love to hear what your own views are concerning any other story that is of interest to you. I still have Rachel with me in the studio. Thank you, Rachel.
You're welcome, sir.
All right, let's take a look at the Blueprint newspaper.
On the Blueprint newspaper, submit cost of minimum wage in 48 hours, Tinubu orders Edu. Senate pledges PD passage of income bill. Why we relax nationwide shutdown. An explanation from NLC and TUC. Details can be found on page 8. Federal government to save $4.4 billion petrol import yearly from CNG usage coming from PCNGI. You can find details on page 8. We just keep seeing the estimation and the breakdown of what the federal government saves. We saw that of subsidy removal, and still yet it feels like we are saving and we are not seeing anything. So I just hope that eventually when we start using this CNG, that if truly the federal government are saving this much money, we will see money being channeled towards other sectors and truly an improved economy. 70 to 80% of NCDC funding from development partners coming from DG. You can find details on page 9. We will adhere to federal government decision on state police and assurance from the IG. You can find details on page 6, and that's all the news on Blueprint newspaper.
On the Daily Times newspaper, Abuja Mining Company Tonye sealed for violating anti-money laundering laws. Detail found in the paper. And the issue of the NLC and TUC industrial action, Finance Minister to present template for minimum wage today as Labour suspend the strike. We won't accept pertry increase on 60,000 naira, Labour insists. Northwest notorious serial kidnapper Issa Rabu orders nap. You can find detail of that in the paper. Tinubu names Archery Road 20N after Wale Shoyinka in the FCT. Senate slam Labour over National Greek shutdown and disruption of Hajj flight. INEC extend registration of voters in Edo State and Ondo State. Nigeria backslide on fiscal transparency, ranks 92nd in Open Budget Survey Global Index. So for those into business, you can do well to follow what's happening there. How inter-parliamentary synergies will sustain Africa amidst global economic challenge, coming from Kalu. And we have a picture story. Some areas boys converge on the railway corridor on the Agege axis of Lagos State on Tuesday. This is a picture over there. So you can do well to grab the paper and see more detail of all the stories of interest to you.
On Nigerian News Direct, Nigerian Content Fund to undergo review for improved efficiency. Nigeria ranks 8th amongst countries with highest food inflation. This is a World Bank report. Membership status, Osun APC urges NWC to take decision on Aribesola. You can find details on page 4. No plan to revoke license of Keystone and others, coming from the Central Bank of Nigeria. Umahi decries vandalism of second Niger bridge. Details can be found on page 4. The big story, minimum wage. Tinubu orders finance minister to present cost implications in 48 hours as Senate prepares to fast-track bill. Strike not suspended, only relaxed for 1 week, coming from NLC president. Airline operators resume operations. National grid restored. Details can be found on page 4. On Cybersecurity Act, stop persecuting journalists doing their job. Editors tell police. Details can be found on page 4, and that's all the news on Nigerian News Direct.
On Daily News Hub, why we suspend a nationwide strike for 1 week, coming from Labour, more detail in the paper. And still on the new minimum wage, Tinubu moves to beat Labour's 5-day ultimatum. Expedites action, gives Finance Minister 48 hours to present template. As the federal government negotiating team meets him, seek presidential approval to pay above 60,000 naira. We would accept little addition to 60,000 naira, Labour warns the federal government. We restored National Grid after strike suspension, coming from the electricity workers. Senate pledges speedy passage of minimum wage bill as Akpabio advised Labour to consider implication of high wages. I hope that they will also consider their own allowances, as well as they are asking Labour to consider that. Still on minimum wage, Nigerians' productivity level can't support 100,000 naira. I recommend 100,000 naira, coming from Mugalu. Airlines resume flight as Lagos Airport and others resume after the strike. Senator Nige resumes plenary after 3 months suspension. Kano Emirate tussle, NBA recognized Sanusi as Emir of Kano State. No plan to revoke Unity Bank, Polarized Bank, Keystone Bank license. This is coming from the CBN following when they revoked the license of Heritage Bank. Finally, federal government gets respite as Labour suspends strike for 1 week as government agrees to pay above the 60,000 naira as the new minimum wage. 1 killed, 30 trapped in Niger mine collapse, which we can see the picture story showing that. And that's all in the Daily News Hub newspaper.
On the Nation newspaper, House of Reps attacks Labour concerning the strike, grid shutdown criminal. 1 million CNG buses will cut 50 million litre petrol use by 20%. Government to save $4.4 billion yearly. Owando's 104.1 billion naira profit rallies investors. NAMA seeks retention of more revenue for operations. The big story, Edon to present new wage template. Details can be found on page 2, and that's all the news on the Nation newspaper.
On Daily Independent newspaper, Nigerian ranks below Benin Republic, Sierra Leone, and others in the Open Budget Survey Global Index. You can read more detail of that in the paper. Senate to enact laws against National Greek Airport shutdown, accusing unionists of economic sabotage, disruption of Hajj flight. More detail in the paper. Tinubu asks Edo to present the new minimum wage figures in 48 hours once realistic, affordable, and acceptable pay for the workers. So we keep our fingers crossed on that. Budget padding allegation. Forget yesterday's event. It's time to move on, Ninge tells senators. Tinubu names artillery road in FCT after Wale Soyinka. Insecurity, difficult terrain, impending rescue of the 30 trapped miners in Niger State coming from the Niger State government. Jonathan says politicians won't approach court if the judiciary is upright. So this is a call for the judiciary to do their job so we don't have issues of that. Nigeria loses over $100 million annually to fish export lure. And we have traders owners lament high price of diesel, say over 40 to 45% of vessel idle. Downside of the paper, alleged plan to revoke licenses of 3 more banks false coming from the CBN. And we have a picture story as well during the inauguration that took place in Delta State, where we can see the former president Jonathan being present as well as others that were there with him. And that's all on Daily Independent newspaper.
On Sweet Crude reports, Nigeria's gas output declines by 4% in 1 month. Indonesia seeks collaboration with Nigeria on oil and gas development. Details can be found on page 3. Nigerian banks' loans to oil sector rose by 78% in 2023, a report from CBN. Power firms' exposure grew 46% to 1.32 trillion naira. 26 plants generate 2,833 watts of electricity in April. You can start with the details on the front page and continue on page 2, and that's all the news on Sweet Crude reports.
Business Times newspaper, respite as Labour suspend nationwide strike for 1 week. Strengthening national capacity for debt management crucial for government funding needs. Strengthening national capacity for debt management crucial for government funding needs, coming from Cardoso, the CBN governor. Africa needs $6 billion yearly to close collectivity gap, coming from the World Bank. The big story, how Nigeria's economy can be more productive, says Nigerians' productivity level can support the 400,000 naira minimum wage. You can find details of that on page 2. And a report here says cybersecurity skills shortage, biggest risks to the MBS. Cybersecurity skill shortage, biggest risks to MSPs. You can find that on page 11. SDPC investigating banks, insurance companies over data breach. We adjudicated cases worth 17 billion naira in 2023. This is coming from the IST chairman at C. Tinubu to the finance minister present the new minimum wage template in 2 days, and we can see a picture story where the president as well as the finance minister and others that will be talking about the meeting concerning the organized labor that happened yesterday. And that's all on Business Times newspaper.
On Punch Sports Extra, Lookman is 8. Fans vote Atalanta forward best Nigerian footballer of 2023-2024 in Punch Sport Extra poll, and you can see Ademola Lookman with 36 votes, followed by Victor Boniface with 21, Osimhen with 12, Ashisat with 9. We have Chamaka with 7, others 15, and then total 100. Napoli eyed 2 Arsenal players in Osimhen swap deal. PSG owe Mbappe 92 million euros following exit. Nigerian boxers sleep in Olympic qualifiers. 5 stranded players arrive Eagles camp in private jet. 20 players in camp. Lookman, Wobi, Okoye expected. Bayern move for Fernandes. You can find details on page 3. De Bruyne open to Saudi move. Aderabio has Chelsea medical. You can find details on page 6. Football prodigy braving the odds to stardom. This is Adesina. You can find details on page 6. And we have Pocket faces life ban for betting breaches. Golf reaches French Open semis. Joshua sends the boys warning amid fight talks. Details can be found on page 2, and that's all the news on Punch Sports Extra.
On Business Day newspaper, oil investors wrestle 20 agency in dollars strive Nigeria. Deal with 2 agencies in Namibia and Angola. Data found on page 21. Foreign airlines more come back as federal government clears trap funds, and we have Oyedele lead committee proposes 5 executive orders to fast-track reform. You can find that in the paper. 4 lessons for Nigeria as Vietnam GDP doubles in a decade. And also on the minimum wage, Tinubu meets the federal government team as committee shelves talk embarks on consultation. You can find that in the paper. We have a picture story here where we can see the 64th annual general meeting, and that's talking about some of the Bank of Industry, the people who were present during the general meeting. So you can do well to grab the paper and read more detail of any other story that is of interest to you.
On Sporting Sun newspaper, Bellingham best in the world beats Messi, Mbappe, Haaland to #1 sport top accolade. You can find details at the back page. Man City launches legal action against Premier League. Details can be found on page 2. Mbappe takes pay cut to join Real Madrid. Fernandes seeks better Man United deal. Pochettino breaks silence on Chelsea exit. De Bruyne hints at Man City exit. Maresca wants to ban Chelsea players from fried eggs and sauce. You can find details on page 2. Aston Villa values Douglas Luiz at 70 million euros. We are battle ready for South Africa. Statement from Wabali. You can find details on page 6. Ndidi puts off transfer talks. Leicester faces 15-point deduction before start of season. You can find details on page 2. Djokovic out of French Open with knee injury. Details at the back page. The big story: 2026 FIFA World Cup qualifier. Stranded Super Eagles star finally hit camp as South Africa loses key player ahead of Nigeria clash. Details can be found on page 6, and that's all the news on Sporting Sun newspaper.
Well, that's how far we can go on the program this morning. Thank you, Rachel.
You're welcome, Sarah.
Thank you to our viewers, and also thank you to the entire production team for making the program a success. Until we come your way tomorrow, to have a great day ahead.